Week 1 of college football is in the book, so let's go back and take a look at these draft-eligible prospects for 2023 and see who helped their stock and hurt their stock. This is the stock report for Week 1 of college football. What's crack-a-lackin'? It's your boy Broshmo. Just in case you did not know, so go ahead, become a bro and subscribe. Leave this video a thumbs up if you enjoy the content. As always, let me know what you think in the comment section below. I'm not going to get to every prospect in this video, so let me know who are some of the guys you thought did a-okay and some that So I'm going to list out 11 guys, and I will be talking about other performances throughout the video, so be sure to watch the whole video. And let's start with Joey Porter Jr. This cat put on a great display against Purdue Thursday night. The dude had 5 pass breakups. Just great, dude. I listed him as a top 75 prospect going into the season. Quite frankly, with his ball skills and his length, he could find himself a top 50 or even a first rounder when it's all said and done. Purdue, they didn't shy away from this guy. They threw the ball at him 14 times. He allowed 6 receptions, 466 yards. A lot of that were screens, but for all intents and purposes, man, Porter, he was good in that game. One of my biggest gripes was the lack of discretion with his hands in coverage. He got flagged a lot last year, and we saw a little bit of that. But again, with these more physical natured prospects, I'd rather have that, someone who's overtly physical, and try to teach them to be less than having someone that just doesn't have that in their nature to begin with. Huge fan of Joey Porter. Can't wait to see how he does going forward. I do want to mention Aiden O'Connell and his performance. It wasn't all that great. Listen, he's one of the older prospects in this class. He's going to be 25 by the time the NFL season starts, after he's drafted or signed as a UDFA. And he's got a good arm. He's got a big arm, but he's more of this rhythm passer. He throws with rhythm. He throws with anticipation. He throws with timing. Didn't look so great against Penn State. I get it. This is one of the better college defenses that he's going to have to face, and he had to do it in the opener. That's kind of rough, but still, you look at him, you look at his skill set, and you're like, this guy feels more like a game manager, maybe more of a late day 3 prospect. So let's keep this rolling with the other Thursday night game being West Virginia versus Pittsburgh and Israel. Aban Akande, he didn't do so hot. I mean, this guy came in, a lot of evaluators were pretty high on him. I would say like early day 3 high on him. Going into the season, he started the last 6 games last year. He started this game, but he was definitely more a part of a running back rotation, and he wasn't even the main guy. Rodney Hammond just was, he was definitely the centerpiece in that running game. And even despite, I get it, he had a 24-yard reception, go for a touchdown. He looked great after the catch, but this was a dude last year who kind of had bricks for hands. 3 drops on 24 targets in 2021. So yeah, maybe the ball skills are much better, but still he's not a good pass blocker, and on the ground he just didn't do well. 8 carries for 15 yards. Like, if he can't get to the second level, then this dude's not going to force a lot of missed tackles. He had none on the game because he simply couldn't get to the second level. His biggest gain was 5 yards on Thursday. And listen, when he can't take initial contact at the line of scrimmage, or else he's going down. Like, this dude's vision does need to improve. If he can't see daylight, and that was a big problem with the game on Thursday, that the offensive line wasn't doing a good job at run blocking. Dante Stills played a big role in that for West Virginia. He had 4 pressures and 2 sacks. Then he gets too bouncy in the backfield, and it leads to a loss. Like, for me, I looked at him and I was like, you know what? The only thing that really makes this guy draft eligible for me is his return skills. So hopefully the rest of the year goes better. But again, being stuck in that rotation with a running back that looked much better than you in the opener, it might be a long season for Israel. Let's also talk about Kedon Slovis, because I'm just going to say this. Different jersey, same Slovis. This guy, there were some errant decision making. He should have thrown an interception. He got lucky that the defender's feet didn't land in bounds. And for all intents and purposes, Pittsburgh, they came in with a very run-centric game plan, just to keep the ball out of Slovis's hands. Just kind of wild. So, like, Slovis, looking at him, it's like, I don't know if he's going to be a draftable prospect, but the guy does have another year of eligibility. But let's continue talking about this game, and let's flip to West Virginia and talk about Bryce Ford Widmond, because you're going to look at that stat line: 9 receptions, 97 yards, 2 touchdowns, and be like, this is a stock up guy. Look at that size, 6'3", 224, and he was pretty impressive in the game. But one of his biggest concerns was how inconsistent his hands were. And yeah, that came up. 2 drops in the game. And quite frankly, the last drop was the worst because it led to the game, how would you say, not game winning, but the go ahead interception, pick 6. He was on like I think a little hook route, and he was looking upfield to what his next move would be, and they just bounced off his hands. Like, oh no. So drops are a big issue because this guy is not a guy that can consistently separate, and he's a contested catch target. And he's very good at the contested catch. He's good at catching in traffic. He's good at high pointing the football. But however, this was not it. The hands still seem to be inconsistent, and for a guy that size, you definitely expect him to be a much better route or a run blocker, and he simply isn't. There was one case in the game where he goes to make a block on a corner, and he just kind of shoves him and tries to move on to the next blocker or the next defender to the second level, and he turns around and his run back's on the ground. He's like, oh, why? Oh, it was because the guy that I blocked, I didn't finish the job. I didn't secure the block. I gave him a little tap, and I tried to move to the second level. You're that big, you need to be much more of a physical run blocker, and he simply isn't. For a guy that's a bigger receiver, I expect you to be better, have better hands, and be a better blocker, and he simply is not. I do want to talk about JT Daniels because he was the other quarterback in this game, coming from USC and Georgia, and just, are we going to see this guy consistently on the field? And he showed out. I thought he had a really good game. The one interception, again, wasn't his fault. It was Ford Widmond not securing the football. This guy, I thought, threw the ball exceptionally well. He still likes to take those, goes for those big plays, and he will still force it into double coverage, but he does I thought he did such a good job at placing the ball and making sure it's somewhere for his receivers to be able to make a play on it, and keeps it away from the defenders. I thought he did a really good job, especially with how piss poor the offensive line was for him. Like, Pittsburgh was getting pressure every play, and he looked poised. He was able to extend the play with his legs, and if he had to throw off his back foot, that ball did not lose mustard. That dude was slaying it. So I'm not saying this guy's a first rounder. I'm not saying he's even a day 2, but I came away impressed after not really seeing JT Daniels for probably since 2020, that 4-game stretch he had with Georgia. So good on you, my friend. We will be talking about some other quarterback performances a little bit later in the video that didn't go so hot. But I want to stick with, I believe this was a Thursday night game as well, as Ibrahim returned to the field after last year in the opener against Ohio State. He tore up Ohio State, but he tore his ACL near the end of that game and had to miss the season. Would have probably been a day three selection in the 2022 draft if not for the injury. Decided to come back. He is going to be one of the older prospects. I think he's also going to be 25 around the time he takes his first NFL snap, and he's not exactly like the best athlete at the running back position in this class, but it was just good to see this guy healthy. He came out, had 2 TDs. I know it was a cupcake showdown, but still, it was just great to see him healthy, and I really want to include him on this list because he's definitely a guy I'm rooting for. And to finish up these pre-Saturday games, I want to go to Michigan State versus Western Michigan, as Jacoby Widmond had a hell of a game. This guy used to be a former Rebel, and you might be like, oh, Ole Miss? No, UNLV. This guy transferred from UNLV after just playing balls out last season, comes to Michigan State, says, I want to play at a Power 5 program and show that I can be a legit prospect. And he had a hell of a game. 10 pressures, 4 sacks, a forced fumble. And this cat was primarily used as a run defender and as a pass rusher. He only dropped into coverage twice. Does that mean he can't cover? Not necessarily, but he was a bit of a spot dropper there at UNLV, and his nice length, it clogs passing lanes. He's a very good athlete, but even if that's something he can't do consistently at the NFL level, you will look at him as a 3-down player because of what he can do as a run stuffer. This guy is so good around the line of scrimmage. He's a quick, twitched up athlete. Man, great length. Like one of the areas I thought he really needed to improve on was his consistency as a tackler, because his tackling technique's kind of dog water, but he's able to secure a lot of tackles just because of his sheer length. But he needs to do a better job of squaring up, centering up, and hitting the strike zone of ball carriers. A lot of times he'll hit high, or in pursuit he'll be caught having to dive and drag. So an area that he needs to work on. Only one missed tackle in the opener, but something he does need to work on. I thought he had a great game, especially in a linebacker class that doesn't have a lot of girth. I thought he looked stellar. Now let's move to Saturday's games. Let's talk about Spencer Rattler. Just like Keenan Slovis, different jersey, same Rattler. This guy cannot work inside a structure. The poor decision making was still on display, and this wasn't against SEC competition. This was against Georgia freaking State. He had 2 turnovers and then a bunch of other turnover-worthy plays. It's just, come on, man. I don't know. Hopefully he gets better as the year goes, or as the season goes on, and Shane Beamer could get him to work inside a structure, go through his progressions, sometimes take his checkdowns, or even just pick up yards with his feet because he's a really good athlete, rather than always hunting for the big play. This was not a good showing for Rattler, a guy who has a ton of character concerns dating back to his time on QB1. You could even look at just the whole up and down season he had at Oklahoma last year, and that just turbulent exit. And he's just, with that type of character, like red flags, he's not a draftable prospect. And if he doesn't play better, he's not going to be a guy that ends up coming out this year. A couple of other I would say highly regarded prospects of the quarterback position who didn't really have ideal week ones. Devin Leary out of NC State. That offense for NC State just didn't look that good this weekend, and they almost lost to Eastern Carolina, if not for a missed extra point and then a missed game-winning field goal by East Carolina. So Devin Leary, considered a day 2 prospect, didn't look so hot. Also, you got Phil Dracovic, a guy that has a ton of talent, a huge arm, and you were hoping he would come in and look a lot more like what he did at the beginning of 2021 rather than coming back from the wrist injury. And it looked, based on this game against Rutgers, which they lost, he looks more like the Phil Dracovic of late last season. I do want to mention, because I have him in the thumbnail, but I don't have an overlay for him, is Anthony Richardson had a phenomenal game against Utah. The guy, he has that incredible mobility. He's an incredible athlete. Maybe even to the kin of like a Josh Allen or a Cam Newton. We'll see as the year goes on. In terms of passer, still a guy that doesn't want to really consistently throw from like inside a structure, but he's got the arm. A lot of people want to knock his accuracy. I don't think he's an inaccurate quarterback. A lot of his inaccuracies come from anticipation and timing, and he's late on a lot of throws. Hopefully that gets better, but what we saw against Utah, man, he's going to be a league candidate to be QB3 in this class. So let's keep this sucker rolling with some wide receivers. Jacob Cohen out of Arizona, former UTEP receiver, tore it up at UTEP, decided to transfer, and I was surprised that the Power 5 school he decided was Arizona, but it looks like Arizona is going to make this cat a focal point of the offense. He had 8 receptions, 152 yards, and 3 touchdowns against a San Diego State team that lost a lot of talent to the NFL last year, but still, it was impressive. I can't wait to see what he does against Mississippi State. There we go. Which, yes, they're an SEC school, but their defense is kind of, but still, it's SEC talent. Let's see how he does. He is a slot guy only. Look at the size, but what he can do after the catch is incredible. A couple other guys who didn't make the list here. Xavier Hutchinson had 3 touchdowns in a cupcake game, basically, for Iowa State. You had Jermaine Burden, who had 2 touchdowns in a cupcake game against Utah State. And same for Jordan Addison, 2 touchdowns for USC against Rice, a cupcake game. But you know what? I like to see those top performers perform well, even in games that are kind of already a foregone conclusion. Let's keep this rolling with Nick Hampton at Appalachian State, because this was by far the game of the week. Appalachian State versus North Carolina was wild, and it was this close because Nick Hampton was constantly pressuring the quarterback for North Carolina. Did I say NC State a couple of times? I meant North Carolina. UNC. This game was wild. It literally came down to the final play. Now, it was wild because the Mountaineers were down by 14. They managed to get what we thought was a game time score, but instead of going for the tie, they decided to go for the win on a 2-point conversion where Chase Bryce just overthrows his guy. So they go for the onside kick. UNC doesn't just recover it, they take it for a touchdown. It was bonkers. It was wild. So the Mountaineers, you think they're done. They're down 8. They get the ball back with good field position. They manage to get the touchdown. They go for the game tying 2-point conversion. Chase Bryce, he's under pressure. He ends up being a yard short. It was a great game, but Nick Hampton really helped this Mountaineer team be competitive. And we will come back to this game because UNC, their secondary, ain't do so hot. Now, I will say that also Hampton, he is kind of a DPR type of prospect, which means designated pass rush only, just looking at his size, but still good prospect. We've seen guys, a guy like D'Angelo Malone, he went pretty high despite kind of being that DPR type of guy. Now, let's talk about Maryland's Jokorin Bennett, the cornerback. This cat, first off, great, a very interesting story. Unranked recruit out of high school, but he was a track star there. He goes to Hutchinson Community College, ends up being an all-star, and he joins Maryland in 2020, where he had a few starts, and then 2021 he was the starter throughout the whole season. 3 interceptions, 8 pass breakups, and he's picking up where he left off. 3 pass breakups in this last game. This guy's got good physicality, whether it's how he contends with guys during the route or even coming up in run defense, because he likes to lay the hit stick. Though at 5'11", 195, it's kind of a meh hit stick, but still, I love the physicality. This dude, again, track speed, I love him as an athlete. He's able to merit guys vertically, and I thought he looked pretty impressive. Definitely a guy to monitor, maybe as a day 3 prospect. Maybe even if the hype continues, he goes and has a really good all-star bowl, whether it's a Senior Bowl or East-West Shrine game, and maybe end up a day 2 guy. Now back to that Appalachian State versus UNC, because Storm Duck looked god-awful. Tony Grimes coming back from injury, that upper body injury he suffered against Florida A&M extremely early in the game. He allowed a touchdown, didn't look great, but Storm Duck looked terrible. He actually didn't look too good either against Florida A&M, where he allowed 9 receptions. But he had an interception, he had a pass breakup, and we were kind of get the feel, yeah, he's going to be this guy that allows a ton of yards, but has really good ball skills. Against Appalachian State, we only saw the guy that gave up a lot of yards, allowed 4 receptions for 73 yards. Unfortunately, 3 of those 4 receptions ended up being touchdowns. That's right, he allowed 3 touchdowns in this game. Listen, man, this is a guy that battled injury the past couple of years. We get to see him healthy, and honestly, this isn't the start of the season. He probably won it. Hopefully, he gets better, but right now, man, he's kind of firmly a day 3 guy with a first round name. Storm Duck is just wild. Now, I typically only do 10 players on these lists, but I had to include freaking Jared Verse, because that Florida State LSU game, first off, banger second half. And Jared Verse was a big part of why this team won. He was constantly getting pressure on the quarterback. LSU's offensive line could not hold him. He had 7 pressures, 2 sacks, and I didn't even include the blocked field goal he had. He had a banger of an outing. And this was a guy I was hyping up during the offseason saying, hey, I know he doesn't have the same pedigree as a guy like Jermaine Johnson, who transferred to Florida State last year after being a Georgia recruit, and then had a very good offseason draft process and ended up going in the first round. This Jared Verse from Albany, but he looked like a man among boys playing there at Albany, and then he goes to Florida State's spring practice, and he's jacked and he looks unstoppable, and he is starting the year as such. This guy seems unstoppable. He did this against an SEC offensive line. I love it. Man, this cat is just really good. Definitely watch out for him. I talked about him in my edge ranking video because I had him pretty high there. So I really like what I've seen thus far. Let's talk about probably the biggest story, though, coming out of the LSU Florida State game being Kayshon Boutte. Because first off, he had a couple of bad drops. I get it. Really just, I would say the one on the slant route where he's not even paying attention, doesn't get his head around. That should have been a touchdown. It was literally in his breadbasket. The other one was a very difficult catch, landed flat backed. So yeah, that's a tough one to bring down when you're landing like that. So I'm not going to fault him for that, but he wasn't even a focal point of the offense. It almost felt like Jaden Daniels was avoiding him on purpose. By the way, if you didn't know, Jaden Daniels, not a serious NFL prospect. I'm just going to say that. This guy don't go through progressions, and he just tries to run the ball a lot. But now Boutte, after the game, he scrubs his social media of anything LSU. Has he played his last game for LSU? Maybe he comes back, because I don't feel like he could just opt out. Like, I don't know what the future holds now for Boutte, who's, again, highly regarded wide receiver prospect. I think he was my wide receiver one. Like, we know what he can do after the catch with the ball in his hands. Yeah, the hands need to be a bit more consistent, but like, it's not like he can just opt out. It's not like he has the resume of like a Jamar Chase. So a lot of questions going on with Boutte. BJ Ojolari had a phenomenal game. If you didn't know, 6 pressures, 2 sacks. Robert Scott, the offensive tackle, a lot of people like out of Florida State. I like him too, but literally he's done really nothing special to warrant like maybe first round conversation. Honestly, might end up coming back. We'll see him the rest of the year. Definitely a guy that needs to take his game to another level. And I mean, really, I don't think among this game there ain't too much else to talk about. Mason Smith, a guy that's more of a 2024 prospect, but could be a first rounder, defensive interior for LSU, goes out for the rest of the year, ACL injury, and he did it while celebrating a 3rd down stop. He gets up, he jumps up, he throws the fist, and then he just comes down wrong. Non-contact injury. He's gone for the year. That really sucks. Best wishes go out to him. But let me know who were some guys I didn't mention in this video. Again, there's a lot of college football, a lot to talk about. I didn't mention guys like Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, or Tyler Van Dyke, Tanner McKee, who all I thought had really good games. Some people are kind of questionable about CJ Stroud, but I thought against a very good Notre Dame defense, he was consistent on the pass-to-pass basis, and he was a big reason that they won that game. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. That's it for the video. Go ahead, do the YouTube thing, and as always, until next time, you be easy, my friends. Later.